provides FFA members with the opportunity for learning, practicing, and developing skills they will need for successful careers. Outside of the classroom and supervised agriculture experience programs, members are presented an opportunity to put what they have learned into action by participating in career and leadership development events, such as the 6 to be featured on this stage. The career and leadership development events featured on this stage include prepared public speaking, extemporaneous public speaking, marketing plan, agricultural issues forum, creed speaking, conduct of chapter meetings, and parliamentary procedure. FFA members across America have advanced from the local, district, area, and state levels to reach the national level through 2 levels of national competition and have made it to the final stage. Over the next 2 days, we will witness the talent, knowledge, and passion for agriculture that encourages FFA members to demonstrate this year's convention theme: I can, we will. As a member of the audience, you have a unique opportunity to be a part of the events here at the FFA Finals Hall. Please give each member on this stage the respect and courtesy they deserve. Enjoy today's events and take note of these outstanding FFA members. You never know, it could be you here on this stage next year. Today's events are extemporaneous public speaking, prepared public speaking, and agricultural issues forum. We will be going right into extemporaneous public speaking. The 4 speakers you are about to see are certainly leaders among their peers. Each speaker has tackled one of the greatest challenges for people all over the world: public speaking. To take their determination one step further, these students have had only 30 minutes to prepare their speech. They will prepare a 4 to 6 minute speech on a randomly selected topic. The topics include the most current issues in agri-science and technology, agri-marketing and international relations, food and fiber systems, urban agriculture, and urban agriculture. Speakers are scored in 7 different areas, including speech content, organization of the material, power of expression, voice, stage presence, general effect, and response to questions. The National FFA Extemporaneous Public Speaking event is sponsored by the American Farm Bureau Federation. As you can imagine, the responsibility of scoring this event is not taken lightly. We are fortunate to have 5 qualified judges with us and 1 questioner. Will the judges please stand as your names are called? Gerald Clausen, retired city manager and farmer. Dennis Wallace, State Ag Supervisor in Washington. Kira Barkley, Director of Analytics at John Deere Financial. Kalina Bruce, Young Farmers and Ranchers Chair at the American Farm Bureau Federation. Bree Harms, Division Manager of Customer Support at John Deere Construction and Forestry. Our questioner will be Amir Fahi, U.S. Sales Training Manager at Dow DuPont. Audience, please help to ensure this session runs smoothly by observing a few basic rules to provide a fair environment for all speakers. Please take a moment to turn off or silence all electronic devices. This includes cell phones. Once courtesy course seals the doors, please remain quiet and in your seat. No one will be allowed to exit or enter the auditorium during a speech. If you must step out before the conclusion, please wait to do so between speakers. Thank you for your cooperation. Would the courtesy corps please secure the doors? Are the judges ready? Our first speaker is John Kennedy of the Jackson Heights FFA chapter in the state of Kansas. He will be speaking on agri-marketing and international agriculture with the question, production economics, marketing, and policy development each acknowledge the existence of international agriculture trade, but they largely ignore the analytical challenges of understanding the behavior of international markets. What is one area do you feel is the most important to international agriculture and trade for America?
I am a big fan of country music, and one of my favorite artists is Aaron Watson. Now, Aaron Watson has a new song called Getaway Truck, and in this song he sings, "You never know what you got until it's gone. He's gonna learn the hard way when he finds you long gone." Sometimes it's good to get rid of the old and bring in the new, but sometimes you may miss what you lost. This is definitely the case in American agriculture trade today. Many economists and policymakers and marketers understand the existence of international agriculture trade. However, they sometimes have a hard understanding of the behavior of international markets. So the question may be raised, what is the one area most important to international ag trade? For me, I believe it is maintaining our current free trade agreements and not trying to bring in new ones. Today, we are going to dive into the benefits of some of our current free trade agreements and then understand what the possible consequences of introducing new trade agreements and getting rid of old ones may be. So, one of the most beneficial trade agreements to American agriculture in the history of the United States is the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. NAFTA has increased, since it was introduced in 1994, American agriculture exports from $7 billion to $11 billion, according to the USDA. Because of this increase, farmers and ranchers have seen a huge boom in commodity prices, and also more than 20% of American agriculture exports, more than 20% of American products are exported internationally. Because of this, farmers and ranchers have seen a huge benefit because of NAFTA and international trade. However, many people within our government today are wanting to introduce new free trade agreements or bilateral agreements with other countries. I don't see this as beneficial because often it's hard to set up new trade agreements. For example, there are two reasons why it's difficult to set up new agreements. Number one is American production practices. American farmers are great at what they do, but sometimes other countries that are less developed have a hard time seeing the benefits of American production agriculture practices. Products such as genetically modified organisms are sometimes hard to export into other countries because they don't quite understand the science behind them. Therefore, it is difficult to export some of these products to other countries and introduce these new trade agreements. Another reason of setting up new trade agreements with countries is difficult is because of culture. Some countries, simply put, don't consume beef or pork, and so it's hard to set up new trade agreements within agriculture within these countries. When we don't do this, it's difficult because you can't see the initial benefit of what American trade can give them. So often, it can be hard to set up new trade agreements, and that's why it's important to keep our existing ones, such as NAFTA. So what would happen if we got rid of some of our current free trade agreements, such as NAFTA? I'm sure many agriculturalists in the room remember the 1980s farm credit crisis. During the farm credit crisis, American farmers saw a huge boom in production, and America had just started a new trade agreement with the USSR. Now, because of this, eventually the USSR invaded Afghanistan, and the United States placed an embargo on trade. This stopped all agricultural trade to the USSR, and because of the boom in production, American farmers were so good that we had more produce than we could possibly sell. Because of this, we saw a huge drop in commodity prices, and at the same time, interest rates shot up. American farmers and ranchers purchased many of their equipment off of loans, and because when interest rates increased and commodity prices dropped, they couldn't pay off these loans. And as a result, many American farms and ranches had to sell out. The American farm credit crisis even left a big impact on my family farm, and our current farm still isn't as big as it was in the 1980s. So how does this relate to our current economic conditions in agriculture today? As we can see, we have recently seen a huge boom in production in the past couple of years. And also, we have NAFTA, a trade agreement that has been a huge benefit to American agriculture, with our two of our three top trade exporters, such as Canada and Mexico. If we got rid of NAFTA, we would see a huge drop in commodity prices, possibly even larger than we did in the 1980s. And those of us who keep track of economics know that interest rates are currently low right now. but they have been increasing. There is potential for another farm credit crisis if we get rid of our current free trade agreements. Though it may not be as bad as the 1980s, it would still be a huge blow to American farm and ranchers. So I believe that North American free trade agreements and other free trade agreements across the world is the most important area for American international agriculture. When we trade with other countries, we increase opportunity for American agriculturalists and increase commodity prices so that farmers and ranchers can invest in sustainable agriculture. According to Sonny Perdue, who addressed the 90th National Convention last night, it is crucial that America engages international trade across the globe. If Sonny Perdue, the Secretary of Agriculture in the United States, said this, I certainly have to agree. Sometimes it's good to bring in the old or get rid of the old and bring in the new, but in the case of international trade in America, we have to maintain what we have for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Ready to go?
All right, you've mentioned NAFTA and its benefit to agriculture. Are there other industries in our country that suffer because of NAFTA?
Yes, there is. Currently, the big issue with NAFTA is the automobile industry. Though agriculture has really benefited off of NAFTA, other manufacturing industries, such as the auto industry, have seen an increase in job losses as well as production because of NAFTA. And that's why renegotiation of NAFTA has came forward. Though in agriculture has really benefited us, it has hurt several other industries, but not quite as much as if we just completely withdrew.
Do you feel that countries are using regulation in place of, even when free trade is in place? If so, how to restrict and shelter their economies?
You know, that's a really good question. There is a little bit of, how do I put this? Sometimes we do see a bit of restriction within free trade, and that's very true. And it's very important that as we approach these renegotiations to try to eliminate that, but as many agriculturalists have been saying, we need to do no harm in NAFTA renegotiation. If we can't quite get what we want, it's better than to have half a loaf of bread than an entire loaf.
You talked a lot about NAFTA in your presentation. Could you tell me about the status of a potential free trade agreement besides NAFTA?
Yes. So currently we have several other free trade agreements in place. South Korea is a large free trade agreement we have with them, and there is potential for another free trade agreement with Great Britain. Great Britain is currently leaving the European Union, and they're going to need to have more trade exporters to them. However, we're seeing a lot of competition in trying to get to a free trade agreement with Britain. So we have our South American exporters such as Brazil and Argentina who are also trying to trade with them. So there is potential for other free trade agreements, but like I said earlier, it's often difficult to set these up because of competition and regulation.
Okay. Is there an international market for non-GMO?
You know, that's a really good question. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of countries that don't quite see the benefits of genetically modified organisms. And I do believe that there is an international market for non-GMO, and that could definitely benefit producers in the United States who do have non-GMO products. However, the fact is that according to Monsanto, at least 90% of American corn is produced using genetic modification technology. So seeing agriculture as a whole, we're mostly a genetically modified country, so then we need to focus on trade deals that open up opportunity for those as agriculture as a whole.
Could you provide an example of an analytical challenge in other countries?
So one challenge with American trade right now is that the value of the US dollar has remained strong and commodity prices have shot down. So a challenge with this when establishing new trade agreements is that other countries see America and they see that they can purchase products from the United States, but because the American dollar is still strong, they have to pay more for those products than they could in other countries. So that's why we're seeing a lot of our trade partners go to Brazil and Argentina, is because the value of their currency is lower and they can purchase the same amount for less there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will now allow a few minutes for judge scoring. If you must exit the auditorium, please do so now. Our second speaker is Kyle Young of the Owasso FFA chapter in the state of Oklahoma. He will be speaking on the topic, agricultural literacy and advocacy, with the question, with more than 190 out of 435 members of Congress representing urban constituents, how can agricultural and rural development issues be successfully implemented as laws?
When I was a young 10-year-old boy, me and my 5 best friends scoured the neighborhood in search for adventure and excitement. In my yard, we had 2 of the largest trees, and from the very top, you could see the nearest town of Tulsa. We loved these trees, but we always thought, what if there was a connection between one and the other? Unfortunately, there was a gap that laid in between. The next morning, we thought, Mom, Dad, can you take us to the local hardware store? Which they did, and we bought 60 foot of cable and 1 plastic pulley. The great idea between all 5 of us, we strung the cable all the way up in the other tree and grabbed the pulley. Me being the first one to go down, slid about 20 miles an hour all the way down, and 2/3 of the way through, I realized I was not getting any slower. I smacked the other tree so hard, I broke my glasses and messed up my shoulder. But the connection between the 2 trees was made. We knew we could perfect this connection. We spent all week working hard, and eventually we could send people or information all the way over to the other tree without any flaw. Here in the 21st century, it has never been easier to connect with people, places, or industries. It's truly amazing. So the question is, why is agriculture literacy such an issue? If it's so easy to connect, why is it such a problem? Well, in 1950, 80% of the American population lived in a rural area. Today, only 20%. In fact, the average American is 3 to 5 generations removed from the family farm. And the American workforce only has less than 1.2% involved in production agriculture. This leaves what I like to call an information gap, where consumers don't have the personal firsthand experience to make their own opinions about things going on in the agriculture industry. And this affects our technology, this affects our public interest, and this also affects our laws. So the question is, how do we get people that are disconnected from agriculture to vote on laws that help our farmers and ranchers? Well, the answer is simple. Get people excited about agriculture. Get them excited about all the technology and things that are going on every day while we sit at home. A great answer is social media. The Robinson Farm Brothers on YouTube make funny parodies about popular music that get people to laugh and get excited about what actually goes on the farm or ranch. Another great example is daily ad clips on Instagram. This allows people to connect on a daily level with the issues that are current in agriculture. It keeps it on their mind, so when they go to that ballot box, agriculture is something that's not foreign to them. We have a problem that's arising. By 2050, it's estimated that we will have 9 billion people in this world. Now, to some people, that's 9 billion people to like or comment on your Instagram post. But to others, and the farmers and ranchers of the United States, that's 9 billion mouths to feed. And with farming being the most volatile industry in the entire world, we have a problem. But what better way to start informing consumers than the largest youth leadership organization in the world, the FFA. With over 500,000 members, I encourage you guys here today to truly go out and share the good news of agriculture. It takes us to get people excited. It takes us to make sure that legislators and other people of our community, state, and nation know the issues that farmers and ranchers face every single day. It takes us to get people excited and to support the farmers and ranchers of the United States so that one day we can feed the world. Thank you.
Could you tell me about a current rural issue being debated in Congress?
Yes. Another rule, it affects multiple things, but the Farm Bill is something that is about to be voted on in September of 2018. The Farm Bill is a very complicated piece of legislation. It's 500 pages long with 12 titles, and it deals with a lot of different things involved with anything from the rural life, farm, irrigation prices, or different crop insurance, or even conservation. But it also deals with something much different, and that's the Supplemental Nutrition Act, or SNAPs. This actually brings consumers to know something a little bit about agriculture while they're voting for the Supplemental Nutrition Act. It's actually 80% of the Farm Bill deals with this, and some people talk about splitting the Farm Bill and making a food bill and also making a farm bill. And as an agriculturist, I think it makes much more sense to keep the Farm Bill as one thing. When consumers are voting on different legislation that goes towards SNAPs or goes towards other supplemental nutrition programs, it also brings their eye towards the rural part of America. The other 20% of the bill deals with crop insurance or conservation, and it's all one vote, it's not just one, and we've been working very hard at making sure that the entire United States knows that the Farm Bill isn't just about SNAPs, but it's also about agriculture.
In business, the concept of win-wins are important, or when both sides benefit from a change. Would you describe a win-win as it relates to urban and rural voters?
Absolutely. A new thing that is actually a great win-win for both the agriculture industry and the consumer is urban agriculture. It's kind of a new and growing thing, but it takes consumers, it takes the agriculture industry and brings it into their own cities or hometowns. This can be anything from a potted plant that you plant on your roof to vertical farms that people plant in abandoned buildings. It's a great way of connecting consumers to producers. And also with the new Eat Locally push that's been going on in the last few years, it allows people to eat locally but also farm locally and understand the toil and hard work that goes into the food that we make.
What role can FFA members and local communities play in the political process? I know you talked about excitement in your speech, but in that political process in DC?
That's a great question. We have many state officers here and national officers that have a lot of power, and they do oftentimes talk with legislators on a daily basis. But even just the basic members, going and talking to the people in the supermarkets, oftentimes people are too young to vote. So when they go talk to older people in their supermarkets about what the difference between organic and conventional, the new technology about drones that are going on in the agriculture industry. It makes people realize that the agriculture industry is very, very important, that even our youth are worrying about it. So when they go to the ballot, they'll maybe have some more information, and actually the young FFA member that was just talking to the lady in the supermarket for 10 minutes may have just changed the world.
Do we have a political party problem, or is it an American people problem when it comes to education and agriculture?
I think it's just an American people problem. There's no one at fault that has done anything wrong whenever it comes to this disconnect. It's just American society moving away from the rural life. The agriculture industry is very hard to get into, very expensive, and has a lot of risk. So when people move away from the family farm, it honestly makes sense. So what we need to do is make sure people know that just farming isn't the only part of the agriculture industry. And every single major you do in college, every single class you take can be related to the agriculture industry. Today's farmers aren't just farmers. They're scientists, they're botanists, they're physicians. It's truly amazing everything that comes in to the agriculture industry.
Rural development and urban development come up a lot in the news. Could you tell me about some of the similarities and differences between those two?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's always, the American culture is to go and tackle and settle what we did. We settle in the West, but Recently, we've been moving away from our agriculture roots. I saw a statistic just the other day that 80% of our population lives within 60 miles of the coastline. And these rural communities are growing and they're booming, but we also need to make sure that the city communities are also going back towards our roots and realizing that, yes, we can have lots of success in the city and we can have lots of things going on, but at the end of the day, every human has to eat. We need to go back to the agriculture roots that we have.
What are 2 things everyone in agriculture should start doing to improve the perception of our industry?
Great question.
We've got to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now provide a few moments for the judges to score. If you need to exit the auditorium, please do so at this time. Our third speaker is Trevor Swagger of the Taylor County FFA chapter in the state of West Virginia. He will be talking on current technology uses and applications in agriculture. His question will be, agricultural technology has evolved to collecting real-time farm data, but there's a concern about who should have access to this data. How should farm data be controlled?
Picture this. Little 6-year-old me on my family's swine production farm in my hometown of Grafton, West Virginia, stomping around in the mud puddles and knee-high rubber boots. Now I know what you're probably asking yourself. Isn't that a lot of work for a 6-year-old? And the answer is yes, but I loved every minute of it. I've loved swine production so much that as a current high school student, I use it as my supervised agricultural experience program, SAE. Through swine production, I've learned many valuable lessons. For example, this one time, my neighbor decided to go about and look at my farm records. Whenever he looked at my swine production records, he thought that he saw something that he didn't, which caused him to have a negative impact and thought on my farm. Seeing that he had this negative thought, he could spread this around our community and locate just my consumers to tell them what is going on. I came about this and talked to him about my issue, which allowed me to realize that there are 3 ways that farmers should be allowed to make decisions on who should be able to see their new technology advancements in real-time farm data. The 3 different methods should be the farmer only, community, and government decisions. Going back to the farmer only. If we allow just farmers to see what is going on, we can maintain ourselves as agriculturists on our farms to make beneficial improvements and allow us to make decisions for ourselves since we're the only ones seeing our records. If we allow just ourselves to see our records, we can maintain healthier relationships with our consumers by understanding what is going on in our farms. No matter what is going on, if a farmer is to make this decision for himself or herself, we can maintain that healthy impact on our farms, maintain that healthy relationship with our consumers, and all the other issues that come about, we would understand. Seeing that just 2% of Americans farm today, it is easy to realize that this 2% can control what is going on. Moving on to the community. If farmers allow their community to see what is going on, there are many benefits as well as disadvantages for seeing exactly how it's going to be done. When we look at the benefits, it would increase our relationship with our consumers and also lead to a rise in agricultural production as they consume our products. But If we allow these consumers to see our different record keepings through our new technology advancements, what's to say that they won't just go about doing this and try to make different agriculture illiterate statements to their public and their peers? If they make these statements, it will leave a bad name for our farm. Agriculturists need a positive impact in their lives to maintain that healthy standing and to maintain economic balance. A recent study conducted by Fairmont State University in Fairmont, West Virginia, suggests that 95% of Americans, or 95 out of 100, trust farmers. This is a beneficial impact, and we can use this to counterbalance the disadvantages, even though they are still prevalent. And finally, if we allow the government to make the decision for us, it allows us to maintain healthier decisions. Don't get me wrong, farmers definitely can make this decision for themselves. But if we allow the government to work with us, for example, organizations such as the USDA or the FDA, we can use this and maintain regulations that would actually impact us as farmers in a more beneficial way. But a disadvantage to this is that a recent poll conducted in 2015 suggests that only 1 in 5 Americans actually trust the government. How are we going to be allowed to trust the government to make this severely important decision to our farms if we're always trying to conduct what is going on ourselves? They are educated, and they can make right decisions, but we, the farmers, hold the highest impact on who should be allowed to see our real-time farm data. Just like myself on my small swine production farm in Grafton, you have to realize that being able to control it myself was most beneficial. Whether you're a small agriculturist or even not even in agriculture at all, it's easy to understand the benefits and effects and allows you to maintain a positive impact and allowing that farmers are the ones to make their own decisions. Thank you.
Could you provide a couple of examples or types of information that is being shared and how it's used?
The different types of information that are being shared consist of many different medias. For example, let's say that, like I said before, my neighbor comes up to my farm and takes a picture of one of my swine. If he posts this on a different media and posts a negative comment, even if he doesn't understand what he's posting, that is definitely an impact to our farms. That would just be one way that this can happen. But on a non-media way, the community and the public talk. Whenever they talk, if someone was to spread negative impacts, it would allow us to not maintain our farms because that negative mindset would be set onto our farms.
Transparency in our grocery stores is something more and more consumers are demanding. How will controlling access to data be viewed by our ultimate consumers?
It can be controlled to our ultimate consumers in a few ways. Transparency in grocery stores is something that everybody wants to maintain to understand what they're eating or what they're purchasing. If we're allowing our transparency to continue, then it's allowing us to benefit ourselves as farmers and allows our consumers to be more responsible and helpful to our farms.
Can big data or the information collected on farms aid in this process in any way?
Can you please repeat the question?
Can the big data or the information gathered on farms aid in that transparency to the consumer in any way, in your opinion?
It definitely can. If the consumer was to see our real-time data, they would understand exactly what is going on our farms, how it's being conducted, and certain things such as that. For example, antibiotics used in different livestock. If they were to see this, it would help in the transparency to understand exactly where their food is coming from and where that piece of sausage is coming from whenever they eat it in the mornings.
How is real-time farm data being gathered today?
Real-time farm data is being collected in many different ways, but one of the most prevalent that has just recently come about are the use of drones. We can use drones on smartphone apps or even on computers to fly out to our farms and collect different data. For example, a new drone has just been conducted that allows us to maintain nitrogen levels and potassium levels in our soil. If we use this, it is definitely a part of our real-time farm data that would be collected onto our farms.
Do you believe equipment manufacturers or seed chemical suppliers should be able to use the equipment or production data to drive decisions?
I personally believe they should, as knowing that this real-time data would collect and help them maintain what they're doing and how much they should be using, it is allowing them to realize just how much of an impact they're making on these farms. If they see our real-time farm data and they see that their levels are changing in different aspects, they can understand that they're using this either too much or they're overdoing something.
Many service providers also make key farm decisions, such as agronomist and nutritionist. What access should they have in this process?
I personally believe that they should have the access to see our real-time farm data, but that's just in my own opinion. Seeing that agronomists and different people of that aspect would be allowed to maintain us and help us make decisions on whether or not this is beneficial to what we're doing to our farm, it would help us increase our knowledge as farmers and ranchers across the nation, and allow us to maintain healthier impacts on our farms that would help not only ourselves, but our consumers.
You mentioned the USDA could make decisions. What is a decision that the USDA might make for a farmer?
If the USDA was to take impact on this subject, then they could make different regulations that would allow us to control who gets to see this. For example, they can look at certain regions of farms and see what their consumers are thinking at that moment. If the USDA takes part in this, the regulation that they can conduct would allow them to maintain just how much is being used and allow us to make the decision as farmers on who should get to see this data.
The access to this information has many benefits. Do smaller or larger farmers benefit more, and why?
I personally believe that smaller farmers would benefit more. Seeing that this has impacted me on a personal level, I can understand that as a small farm, it is sometimes hard to get off the ground. Knowing this and getting your farm off the ground is one of the main things that we have to maintain. If we get our farms off the ground using this real-time data, it is impacting us in the most beneficial way, at allowing our local consumers to see what is going on and allowing ourselves to trust in what we're doing on our farms.
Yeah. How should FFA be preparing its future student leaders to utilize this new information?
The FFA should allow their new student leaders to see this information and understand the new technologies that take part in it. As you see this, the FFA allows us to maintain healthy relationships.
Stop. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We will now provide a few moments for the judges to score. If you need to exit the hall, please do so at this time. If you are just now joining us, please take a moment to silence all electronic devices, including cell phones. This is to ensure all speakers are provided with a fair environment. Thank you for your cooperation. Courtesy Corps, please secure all doors and hallways. Are the judges ready? Our fourth speaker is Colson McCoy of the Global Impact STEM Academy FFA chapter in the state of Ohio. He will be presenting on the topic of agricultural literacy and advocacy with a question. Recently, there have been instances of large organic producers failing to comply with organic standards. How is the public perception of agriculture impacted when a producer is non-compliant with the current industry standards?
Good morning. And I'd like to start out by sharing a quick little story. Just last year, as a junior in high school, I got the opportunity to attend the World Food Prize in Des Moines, Iowa. So I see maybe a little familiarity with it. And for those of you who are not familiar with the organization, in simplest terms, it is considered the Nobel Peace Prize of Agriculture. It was founded by Dr. Norman Borlaug a little while back, who is known as the man who saved 1 billion lives. Now, while I was there, I got the incredible opportunity to talk with Ambassador Quinn of the World Food Prize. And he said, we got to talking a little bit, and I'd asked him, Mr. Quinn, what are the biggest issues facing the agricultural industry? And he said, there are numerous, too many to count, but the top 3 that came to his mind was 1, the use of genetically modified organisms, 2, women in agriculture, and finally 3, which I consider to be the most important according to my topic today, consumer interest and public view of the agricultural industry. Now, of course, being a junior in high school, that was a lot to take in at one time, but what I realized is that consumer interest and consumer view is incredibly significant. Now, the USDA approximates that about 9 billion people will populate this earth in 2050. Now, when we talk about relevance and the importance of the agricultural industry, we have to understand that there are various aspects of that, and one of them is organic produce. Now, personally, my agricultural background, I have little to none. I do not come from any family farm, so that's something definitely new to me growing up, going into my high school. I attend the Global Impact STEM Academy as a senior, and it is an ag-based STEM school, early college curriculum that focuses on incorporating agriculture into everything that we do. Now, there I had learned numerous things, but again, one of those things was that approximately we have about 14,000 organic farms that dot America's rural landscape. Now, the benefit of these farms is that typically with organic farms that they can be found just about anywhere. There are a lot in the city. A lot use hydroponics and anything along those lines that can be beneficial to the agricultural industry. However, for me personally, and what I've seen with the public view is that typically when a consumer has one view of a particular product, and if it's negative to begin with, it's going to remain negative for a long period of time unless somebody comes in to share some of those facts. Now, I believe that it has two major impacts on the agricultural industry. And the first is that hearing when some of these producers of organic farms are not complying with those standards is that it's going to decrease the interest in agricultural production. Now, again, the USDA approximates that we have to produce almost 70% more than what we are currently producing in order to feed that population of 9 billion in 2050. So we're looking at roughly maybe 1 in 7 people across the entire world who are malnourished. So the significance and importance of having that support from our consumers is just as important as anybody else in the entire world. So there's two things. Again, one, consumer interest is going to be decreased. Seeing consumers looking from an outside standpoint, and also seeing that as from a personal view growing up, seeing agriculture as simply maybe the cornfields that line the side of the highway and where the livestock you raise are the 2 golden retrievers in your backyard. For me personally, that was something that I didn't quite connect with. Having that first interest and first introduction to agriculture, if it was negative, and seeing it as something where these organic farmers are not following the current standards, it would be detrimental to not only my interest in agriculture, but my faith and confidence in the agricultural industry. So again, in conclusion, first of all, I'd like to thank you all, but also we have to remember that the significance and importance of the public viewpoint of these producers of organic farms not following the current standards would be detrimental to the agricultural industry, the faith in the agricultural industry, and finally, of course, the most important, the interest in the agricultural industry. Thank you.
All right. Could you tell me how organics are regulated in our country, or a little bit about that?
I'm sorry, sir, could you say that one more time?
Could you please tell me a little bit about how organics, or who regulates organics in our country?
So who regulates that is the USDA. As far as going beyond that, FDA may be involved as far as producing some of that in local stores.
Okay. There have been a number of articles and news stories in the press concerning, could you please tell me about a situation where an organic producer has been under investigation and the outcome?
Under investigation? Sure, I'd love to share a story. Actually, a local story from my hometown in Springfield. We have a couple organic producers in the local community, specifically in Yellow Springs, a small little city not too far from Springfield. So I was definitely familiar with the area. Something that was kind of investigated there was something that they were growing with hydroponics. There was a lot of controversy over whether or not the total nutritional standards held up, what they were producing as far as the confidence that consumers have in that product. A lot of the time, we have consumers worry about quantity over quality. There was a huge investigation as far as the time that they were putting into that, the nutrients that they were putting into that in that specific product, and whether or not it was actually safe and healthy.
Could you tell us, or do you know, of any of the restrictions that are required to make a product organic?
Sure. So there are actually numerous different restrictions with that. It gets very particular, and that's all set in place by the USDA and the FDA, who restrict or determine those actual regulations. One of them in particular, I got to go to a county in Ohio where I got to go to the extension office of the Ohio State University. And while they were there, they talked about aquaponics, so something maybe a little bit different than hydroponics where they actually grow the produce, but similar to that. In order for them to count as non-GMO, organic produce that they raise using aquaponics, they have to go through a process basically generations back in the line of whatever produce that they have. Specifically with them, it was lettuce. They have to go back, there's lots of chemical analysis, specific things along with that as well, and of course making sure that it passes all the tests and making sure that it is organic.
Do you feel that organic producers failing to comply helps or hurts those farmers using conventional practices?
I would say that it helps. I don't think any one particular event or one particular production agriculture is more significant than the other. I think a lot in today's world that we tend to think, we always say them. We say them, the consumers, but we are also them. We consume that same food as well. And sometimes there's a lot of combat between whether, this one way of agriculture is better than this one way of agriculture. And sometimes we just need to come down to our grassroots that regardless of what that is, it doesn't hurt any one particular person. It's up to the consumer as to what type of product they want to bring to their table from the farm.
What are 2 things everyone in agriculture should start doing to improve the perception of our industry?
Great question. So approximately it's estimated that about 20% of all current farmers are millennials. So with that type of population, you're going to have a lot of people who are interested in social media. That is, I would say, definitely probably one of the biggest ones, introduction of social media and the use of it properly without getting too involved with any of the outside resources or getting too politically involved with specific things, just making sure that you're educating the consumers and the public on a positive viewpoint of agriculture. And then the second would be the outreach programs that we have. I know the Ohio State University has lots of extension programs that they offer, different things. Of course, the Ohio Farm Bureau, American Farm Bureau offer farm days. That's another really big thing, but I'd say the 2 biggest things that we need to be able to do is effectively use social media and have effective programs for outreach.
How does the FFA support these activities?
Specifically activities in educating students?
In everybody that in agriculture from the prior question, everyone in agriculture should start doing, you mentioned social media, and how should the FFA help in that?
How should the FFA help with that? So we have one of the greatest advantages, and that's a membership of almost 650,000. Regardless of whatever background we come from, we all are on the same team. You look down to your left and you see that one emblem that represents everybody in our great organization. With that, I think personally, with the FFA, we do a great job in using that social media, utilizing it to the best of our ability and educating the public and also our...
All right, that's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
This concludes the finals hall of the Extemporaneous public speaking event. This event is one way FFA members can develop their ability to communicate in a powerful, organized, and professional manner, boost their self-confidence, and earn recognition. Congratulations to all of our speakers today. Join me in thanking our speakers, judges, and timekeepers. The results of this event will be announced during the 7th General Session tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. I welcome you to join us today at 11 a.m. for the Prepared Public Speaking Leadership Development Event, Finals Hall. Thank you for attending and have a great day.